This city is well used to receiving international visitors from the United States and from Europe. But since the dust on the War of Lebanon has settled, we haven't seen that many famous people passing through the streets. Until today, British Prime Minister Tony Blair's in town. But I'm standing outside the King David Hotel, and inside is the British Prime Minister, Tony Blair. Now, he hasn't come to Israel this time round for that much attention. It's not easy to catch a glimpse of Tony Blair this time round. Last night he met with the Prime Minister at heures, and today in a series of closed meetings in the hotel behind me, he'll meet with Tzipi Livni, the Foreign Minister, plus the parents of the 2 Israeli soldiers still captured in South Lebanon. This is not the usual sort of trip for the British Prime Minister. He isn't really here long enough to do that much of the diplomatic knocking of heads that he's used to. This is a 48-hour-long handshake-a-thon. Well, the background to this visit by the British Prime Minister, he's announced he'll be stepping down. So the ramifications for that for the British public, they'll lose their Prime Minister for a decade, but Israel will lose what has been a strong political ally and friend, and the ramifications of that could be huge. As far as Israel is concerned, a friendly Britain has been extremely important. Tony Blair has single-handedly prevented Europe from being a one-way pro-Palestinian street. The war in Iraq badly damaged those European leaders who supported George Bush and the US. And since then, anyone who stands with the USA, on Middle Eastern affairs at least, is in for a tough ride, both domestically and internationally. This warm embrace with the heures should be taken literally. These are 2 men united by a common ideology. They stand firm against terror and are wary of the European camp who seeks to appease it and seek a rapprochement with some of the dangerous elements in the Arab world. So when Tony Blair does step down next year, as he has now pledged to do so, who will replace him, and what would that mean for Israel? Well, assuming the Labour Party in Britain doesn't tear itself apart in the months ahead, this man is the likely choice, now Chancellor Gordon Brown. He differs from Tony Blair on several issues, but the only issue that affects us here in Israel is foreign policy. And if Machiavellian rules of politics are to be believed, Israel could find herself out in the cold as far as Britain is concerned. Rebels of Tony Blair, in his own government and the House of Commons, have promised to make that the #1 issue on the Labour Party's annual conference this year. There is a huge pro-Palestinian camp in the Labour Party who despise Tony Blair's close ties with George W. Bush. One Labour Member of Parliament was recently denied access to Israel, turned away from Ben Gurion Airport back to Britain. Lynn Jones had come on a mission to twin her home city, Birmingham, with Ramallah. Ahead of Tony Blair's current trip to the region, the voice on the Palestinian street was that the British Prime Minister was not welcome. They said he stood by allowing Israel to bomb the Lebanese freely, and now they say he's not welcome in Ramallah or any Palestinian city. Blair's successor, Gordon Brown, or whoever it may be, will undoubtedly take an about turn and try to warm the relationships with the Palestinians. And that, for sure, would be at the expense of friendly ties with Israel. So with Tony Blair in the Middle East, for a trip that is really not more than a surface attempt to paper over cracks after the recent war that did neither Blair or Olmert much good at all, this is the snapshot. But the bigger, more important picture is the end of the Blair era, and quite possibly with it, the end of a close Israeli-British alliance. With Olmert's popularity also waning, it could be that both of these 2 leaders will have been replaced before the year is up. For Info Live TV, I'm Adam Ross in Jerusalem.